welcome to BK Academy at Chess. This is Black Knight. It's black to move. This comes from a study by Keidanski in 14. However, Kopiev suggests this as the best way to handle the position. If white plays king to d5, how should black play? So when the king pushes, he can take the pawn. Now how should black play? If you notice, we have the Saavedra maneuver. And if you notice the placement of black's king, we know that we can hold this position. If you do not know this, I provided you with links to videos in the left-hand margin. Now the second line that Kopiev gives us is king to e5. So how should black play? He only has one move to hold this position, and that move is king to c5. Now, white has to push one of his pawns to get the draw. If he plays king to f6, now black is winning, but he only has one move. Right? I'm not going to go into the winning solution, right? But we will look at this. If he pushes the e pawn, how does black hold this position? He moves his rook to c1 or c2 to get the x-ray attack in case of the promotion. Now this is the third line that Kopiev gives us, and it's very tricky. I find myself struggling to explain it, but I'm going to go through it very quickly. King to d3. Now, I like this move because it still holds. However, it black two moves to get the draw. What move? What move would you make? Kopiev gives us this line: Rook to c3. The other move, rook to c8. All other moves are losing. Now Kopiev also gives us this. Now black can win, but he only has one move. Rook to c8, followed by king to c5. Okay, Kopiev had his say. Now let's see what Keidanski can add to this problem. I particularly like Keidanski's solution. Brings the rook to c1, because it's always a good rule to get the rook behind the pawns. Right? Now if white plays king to d5, how should black play this position? I like rook to f1, because it sets a trap that I believe most players will fall for. And that trap is moving the king over to protect that pawn. But in order to get the win, black has only one move. Now we went over this in the video that I provided the link to in the left margin. So if you don't know the winning solution, I'd advise you to review that video. The move is king to c5. Now what should white do here? There's a few moves that still gives white the draw, but this move here gives black the most difficulties, because most players don't know the Saavedra maneuver. And if you don't know this, then I advise you to review the video that I provide you in the link in the left-hand margin. Okay, now let's f-pawn, because two pawns on the 6th rank, it's almost impossible for the rook to stop. However, black does have this, where he forces the king over to the e-file, giving way for his king to approach the pawns. Now if white white pushes the f pawn, how should black play? We had the same position in our last lesson. Checks the king, and no, he doesn't approach with the king yet because white would just promote the f pawn. He has to check the king again. Now his king can approach the back pawn, so that if white promotes, black will exchange on f8 and then take the e pawn with his king. Okay, so if the e pawn pushes, he checks the king from behind and simply approaches the pawn with his king. Now, if you're white, how do you give black the hardest time? e7. Because black must play perfect. He cannot rush his rook to e1 to stop the promotion because he will lose. He has to check the king to make a way for his king to approach the pawns. Right? Now, if white promotes, we have the X-ray attack. Now let's take a look at this. We already looked at this before. How does black stop this? He checks the king and he approaches the pawn. If the king tries to go around, that's the easiest way to get the draw. Now white could also try king to f6. This move's obvious. You have to stop the promotion. But now, how should black play? Now you see that white is getting ready to promote. That's unstoppable. Although we can exchange on e8. But what about the pawn on f5? So we know we have to approach that pawn. However, we don't use d5. We must use d6, right? Because if white promotes, we take, and we have that. Now we can't use d5 because white doesn't have to promote on the very next move. He also has this, but that gives us time to protect the promotion square. Now white still has one other option. He could try to bring the f pawn down to support the promotion. So how should black stop that? There you go. Now what can white do? Okay, let's look at white's best try in this position. King e6. Now black checks from e1 and the king moves to the king's side to block black's king from approaching the pawns, right? So how does black defend this position? Checks the king. Now if the king goes in front of the pawn, that's easy. You just attack the f pawn. Now if the king steps off to the side, right? How does black? Well, black attacks the pawn to prevent it from promoting, right? Now how should black play? He attacks the pawns with his king. Now here's the trick. The only way to stop this is to threaten mate from the side, right? So with that in mind, how should white play in this position? By stepping to the side on c7. That way he prevents the mate coming from the a file, right? So now, black attacks the pawn. There you go. So, if the king comes over, how should black play? He checks the king, right? Black has no other choice. He has to check the king again. And here, he checks the king again. Now, we can go back and forth, or white can step over. But here, how should black play? He moves over to e6 so that when the pawn pushes, he has check. Thanks for tuning in to BK Academy.